Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Mankamal Singh, and I'd like to welcome you on to the Sikh Perspective, a special show that we carry out every week at the KTV London studio. With me, I have two of my fellow panelists who are going to contribute to this show today, Tasveer Singh and Manmohan Singh. The show today is a discussion around the impact of hate and the effects of hate, and how it has huge repercussions in society as a whole. And I'm going to start the discussion off by reading a statement from Amnesty UK that was released earlier this year. And basically, the gist of the release of the report at the time was based around Brexit, was based around the politics and the changing landscape within the Western world, and it starts off by talking about toxic political rhetoric with echoes of 1930s hate speech is stirring up violence worldwide. Amnesty UK's Director of Campaigns said that the campaigning for the Brexit referendum was a particular low point with all too real consequences, pointing to a 57% spike in reported hate crime the week after the vote. She accused the British government of creating a hostile climate for refugees and migrants as it shirked its responsibilities to them. But the UK was not alone in seeing vicious rhetoric targeting the most vulnerable, as 2016 saw leaders worldwide peddling the dangerous idea that some people are less human than others. She pointed out particularly to violence stirred up by Donald Trump, right-wing Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, and Philippines leader Rodrigo Duterte, who launched a war on drugs that has cost thousands of lives. This report documents the very real human consequences of politicians like Trump, Orban, and Duterte, wielding a toxic agenda that hounds, scapegoats, and dehumanizes entire groups of people. What's interesting about that statement, that report, is that I think what Amnesty are really pointing out is nothing new in that respect, because this hate agenda has always existed, probably existed since civilization began. There's always been divides and agendas and politicized hate campaigns that have led to mass violence, genocides that we've recorded in history. And, you know, we being Sikhs have been victims of hate crime. Now, you know, we can talk about our personal experiences as individual victims. And when I mean victims, I mean, you know, growing up in the UK, going to school in the UK, especially our generation, you know, we experienced targeted abuse. Yeah. It might have been verbal, you know, in some cases it was physical, but it was targeted at us because we were different, because we had an identity that was very different from everyone else's, and people couldn't relate to us. So we've been victims of it, so we can see it from that perspective as well. But I think what we want to start this discussion, what's important to start this discussion with, is to talk about how a Gursikh should behave, and how a Gursikh should understand what the Guru's message is, particularly around the emotion of hate. I mean, Manmohan, you might be good to come in on this.
I mean, if a Gursikh really wants to understand the concept of how the Guru dealt with hate and what the Gurbani has to talk about hate, and Gurbani thāं te कहती है, सब में जोत जोत है सोए, तेज दे चानन सब में चानन होए. Or slokes we hear, sabbe sanjiva, lukoe na disse, bhaira jiyo. Gurbani is always trying to break down hate barriers. He's not trying to create any hate, whether it's through breaking down the caste system, whether it was the equality between men and women, whether it was between religions. Jai Guru Nanak Sahib Maharaj ne took the Udasi period. It was for that great purpose, to break down these divisions of hate. Because as human beings, we become tribal. Why? Because we want to be superior. And superiority is due to your ego. And that all drives through hate. So there's a very close correlation between the two. And this is what Gurbani is trying to attack, the core of you. And when any one particular ego in a particular person gets too much power, they may not realize it, but they will portray that power through hate, through control. And the prime example we see through the Guru periods themselves. Guruan ne pyar da sandesh le aanda. Guruji brought the message of love. And yet the Gurus themselves were subjected to great hate. And Guru Arjan Dev Ji is given such torture for what reason? Because they're trying to break down these barriers. And yet in return, what are they getting? Tattiyan loha, garam rehta, torture. And then if you look at the response that Shayan Pasha, Guru Hargobind Ji gives, he could have taken revenge, if you want to use that word, against Jahangir, but he didn't. He didn't. He didn't see an element of hate. He thought has been an injustice that's been occurred, and that injustice should be brought to justice, and he dealt with it through that matter. Only any kiya कि just because you've now done this to my father, I'm going to do it to you. They didn't do that. They looked at the merits of the crime and they accordingly gave the punishments. And this is the greatness of the Gurus. And as Sikhs in today's day and age, we've got to be really careful where the line is. Yeah, we cannot be judge, jury, and executioner. We have to understand that time to time people will make mistakes. Time to time things will happen. How are we going to deal with them? And I think there's no better way of looking at it through the examples of our Gurus. And I think it's really tragic that when it comes to that period, that time, we fall. We don't take the right steps, and either we're too extreme or we're too relaxed.
I mean, it's a natural emotion as well. That's the thing. I mean, a lot of these emotions come out naturally, and it, Gurbani talks about how to manage that and how to try and overcome those urges. But I mean, there are examples of even outside of the Gurus, the Gursikhs, I mean, Bhai Kanhaiya, for example. I mean, there is an example there.
I mean, Bhai Kanhaiya ji, he would have followed the example of Guru Gobind Singh ji. So, one of the greatest acts of hate which happened towards the Sikh religion at the time was Guru Tegh Bahadur ji Shahidi. That was a blatant example of hatred. How did Guru Gobind Singh ji react to that? He reacted by giving the Sikh an identity. So instead of making them hide behind or lose them within the crowd, he says, I want my Gursikh to stand up. So the whole persona, the whole values which the Gursikh is holding is also covered within that identity.
It's almost like taking away from the victim mentality, because the victim would shy away, the victim would hide, and so Guru Gobind Singh Ji almost forced, not almost, but forced the Gursikh to stand out, so he could not act as the victim, I suppose.
It's not act as victim, and like Manmohan Singh is saying, that it's not, whatever our Gurus did and whatever a Gursikh should do, there's always a bigger picture. It's not a personal agenda. We have to look at that, and we've got examples of that in this country as well. Whenever Gursikhs have faced hate, something quite massive has come out of it. They've been able to, maybe change laws, put impact on government. So there's a bigger, the thought process has to be bigger. It can't be personal, that, it's personally to me, and I will react to it by hurting somebody else. Now again, these are the examples which have created Gursikhs of like such greatness of Bhai Kanhaiya, who, Bhai Kanhaiya ji was the Gursikh who saw the enemy as Guru Gobind Singh ji. They saw the jyot in all. And the Gursikhs themselves, the Singhs who were fighting in the battlefield, they thought that Bhai Kanhaiya was being a traitor to Sikhi. Saying what you're doing. We're here to fight this just war, this just battle for righteousness, and you're there supporting the individuals who are against it. And Guru Gobind Singh Ji, then the message, the teachings he gave at that time, it's groundbreaking.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely groundbreaking. I mean, all religions do practice, don't preach hate, but what the Guru also taught was, how do you overcome that? How do you overcome that in a very productive, in a very in an attempt to better society?
I mean,
because that's what it basically is. Hate will bring down society.
Exactly, absolutely. But if you look at the Ardas, the Sikh Ardas, there's repetitive, recurring references to the atrocities, in there. So by having that repetitive, recurring reminder of those atrocities, what's it actually doing to us? Is it making us more resilient? Is it building strength in us?
What I'll take from that is, we're not to be victims of hate. people always say Sikhs always talk about victimization towards them. I want to say very clearly, we're not victims of any hate or any kind of atrocity. We are going to champion it. People who carry out atrocities, we have to champion them and find a way through them. And it's always been in the Sikh ethos and the Sikh way of thinking. When there any kind of atrocity, any kind of hardship in front of us, we've always used Guru da Asra. Giving us that mentality that you're not a victim. You're going to use the Guru's Asra, the Guru's support to fight through this. Why? Because it's going to develop you. It's going to make you. And that's why I think in the past we've been able to pull on the Guru's resource, Guru's Asra, and achieve it. So we're never to think, and that's why in the Ardas, when it says, and so forth, Khalsa ji bolo ji, Waheguru. Why? Because we are not going to allow that to break our spirit. And this is the whole championing. And that's why I always say we're going to be champions of victimization. We're not going to be victims.
So then, effectively, if you take that a step further, then not only should we be champions, we should be supporting victims of hate and victims of persecution as well. I mean, it's difficult if you look at it. I mean, being a victim is hard. You know, it's you know, it's easy for us to make these bold statements to say, you know, we need to be resilient, to be strong. But you know, it's can be difficult.
I mean, let's bring this down to reality. Now, for example, the Sikhs who experienced the genocide of Delhi in 1984. Now, you know, that whole build-up. Now, that's an example. That's a great example, in fact, for us to actually, as per your opening statement, let's put that into context now. So, how did the Sikh all of a sudden become an enemy of the state? How did that happen? You know, this years of propaganda. You know, the Sikhs, if we look back at the history of the Sikhs, so the Sikhs helped in the independence, the Sikhs helped in the Indo-Pak wars, the Sikhs helped, you know, all these things. So we in terms of sacrifice, in terms of trying to better the country
and build a nation,
we have that backbone. How did the Sikh at that point in time then be seen as the enemy? This is years and years of propaganda, years and years of creating the enemy, years and years of creating an image of who your enemy looks like. Now, through those years, and then when the time came, the state government was very easily were able to switch it on, switch on the effects of that and turn it around. You know, through the radios, through the media, through word of mouth, through just spreading rumors and lies.
I mean, this is the power of hate speech, and you know, it's very easy to see hate speech as just rhetoric or you know, bigoted talk or whatever, and dismiss it. But the dangers of hate speech is it can lead to violence. It can lead to genocide. It's orchestrated.
It's not done as a mistake. It won't be done as anything. It's deliberate. The outcome is that, you know, there is to create a divide, is to create pain, create hurt. And you know, like what we're saying here, you know, it's easy to speak about these things on a couch. But you know, those families who have gone through those genocides, gone through those pains, still looking for justice, you know, what can we offer them? What can we offer them in that way? So, but yeah, it's all structured, you know, and we can't just think that this was you know, that these kind of genocides or these kind of promotion of hate isn't got an agenda to it.
It's, I mean, this is what Amnesty is saying. It's politicized. There's a political agenda, and we are living in a time where we're seeing a US president that makes everyone feel very uncomfortable because it's based on a hate agenda bubbling in the background. So you know, we're all not comfortable of the current trend of right-wing politics.
And I think if I can come into where you was, I mean, if you look at history in general, look at Stalin. He used hate agenda against his oppressors. He wanted his competition. You know, Mussolini done the same in Italy when he was coming in the 1940s. Hitler was looking at those trends and done the same in Germany. You know, selected a community who was, you know, wealthy but not very martial. You know, a bit meek. And I thought, you know, we make them the target of our downturn and our economic downturn. And then you look at these people that over time they've always orchestrated it. So India done the same. And I think anyone who feels that they need to almost show their might, that we're strong, or they want to show that we can do what we want to do, they will do these kind of things. And that is a lesson.
I mean, we've got to be very careful when we say, I mean, when we target a nation as well, we're probably talking about the elites or the people who were running the nation at the time. But yes, certainly, you know.
And that Trump is doing the same. If you come back to Trump, he's seeing that there's at the moment there's a divide in the USA. There's a divide, and there's obviously a lot of a weak economy as well in the USA as well. So what do? You drum up. You use hate to bring the nation together again. You find a common enemy, and that's always been the part of the elites. They find a common enemy, bring everyone together again, say our problems are due to that one particular community or that particular person, and then it helps to kind of allow them to have a longer term.
Yeah, I mean, let's localize it now to where we are in the UK, and try and understand this. Now, we've talked about when we were growing up, we were victims of hate crimes. We probably didn't recognize them as hate crimes at the time. We probably thought it was part of who we are, and we've just got to accept those whatever was said to us in a negative way, an aggressive way. But I certainly saw elements of violence. We saw it when we were growing up.
We're the generation who were targeted by NF. So those names have probably been lost in throughout the ages. But National Front was were very aggressive, very violent and extreme sort of organisation targeting you. They were parts of
they were parts of
Ilford and Dagenham and Romford. You wouldn't go towards. You wouldn't go beyond a certain pub, for example. These are the kind of things we experienced. And now, just because those individuals are wearing suits, and now they're able to speak on podiums and in front of many people, it's the same it's the same thing. And for us as a generation who've experienced that grassroots sort of extreme, where you can't go into zones or areas, and then to see these similar kind of thought but being spoken at a stage or something like that, this is worrying for us. It's worrying for me as a parent.
Yeah, but it's the dangers here is that what we're finding with that agenda is that it's evolved. It's very clever, that agenda, and how that hate and racist agenda has evolved into targeting perhaps another group. So, and we're seeing this alliance, and we're seeing a sympathy towards right-wing thinking when it's perhaps targeting the Islamic community, for instance. And it'd been very clever about creating that whole kind of Islamophobia and getting maybe more interest from people who probably don't perceive themselves as being racist, or probably don't say, well, we're not actually racist, but we've got this agenda against this group of people because they are attacking us. And that evolution has taken place, and that's where we stand today, where effectively it's the same message that we were seeing in the 70s and the 80s.
Just changes.
It's packaged differently. And we've got to be very clever about it. Not very clever, but very mindful and ensure that Sikhs don't get sucked into that.
We have to be really careful, because we can fall into we can feel comfortable. We think that we're not targets anymore. And then we live our lives. We in fact support these kind of individuals. This whole thing, and the agenda is that we are probably on that agenda as well. So let's not be naive about this as well.
But there's a Punjabi saying there, isn't it? That if the next door neighbour's house on fire, you shouldn't see that as an ignorance or ignore it, because it's going to come to yours next.
Yeah, exactly.
And if we are turning a blind eye to certain extremist behaviour towards one part of the community, that's just awaiting fire to come into you. Because at the end of the day, why would they stop at that?
It's against the Guru's principles. It's against what the Guru has taught us. It's against what the Guru believes. So us as Sikhs, we have to always be there. We have to stand on the right side.
Fight for injustice. So whatever the injustice is, you stand against that injustice. Regardless of who's perpetrating it. We're not looking at the race. We're not looking at the religion. The Sikhs don't look at the colour, but they look at the injustice and should stand up against that injustice. And in this case, when you're seeing something that's quite blatant, and you're seeing that there's an agenda here, you've got to be clever about that, and you've got to ensure that you don't get sucked into it. I mean, I remember when BNP announced its first Asian candidate, and it was so projected as it's a Sikh. It was a person with a turban. We had to go through that, and embarrassed as we were by it. They were clever enough to portray that, and some people were naive and foolish enough to fall for that and accept that. So we've got that danger there as well. That's projecting there in the background. But I mean, in terms of being victims, now there is monitoring of hate crime. It's much more transparent, I suppose. Well, I wouldn't say it's as transparent as it should be. But it's there now. It exists. There is a thing called hate crime, which didn't exist once upon a time.
It's really weird, but isn't it? I mean, we're the most transparent community. Yeah. We wear the stars. We have turbans. We have beards. We're across the country. but for some reason the government, the UK government, won't see us as a community that needs to be concerned or needs any kind of hate which needs to be recorded against them.
Yeah.
We're lost in the system.
We're lost in the statistical system.
Yeah, how does that happen? How does that happen when it's very, through the 60s, through the 70s, through the 80s, all the issues which the Sikhs have faced, whether it's been racist targets, even in the work employment, even in all those kind of environment, throughout these years, how is it that, we're now, we haven't been able to prove our existence to these governments? Personally, I think it's just literally they don't want us on the agenda.
Or have we not put ourselves out there? Have we not represented ourselves as best as we should have been? I mean, I've seen Sikh representation. There is good representation out there. I'm not putting the representation that we have. I think we've actually got very good representation, but it stems from the fact that the last 20, 30 years, it's taken a long time to get to where we are.
But as a state,
I think,
sorry.
No, as you're saying, I mean, I think if you want something, you have to go and kind of almost put the case forward for it. And I think maybe that's been our downfall in the past, that we haven't really looked at in the areas where we need to be recognised.
There's also splits as well. I mean, I'll be honest with you.
Of course.
There's many people from
who
the
don't
community
recognise.
many people from our community that will probably throw the spanner in the works. And make things a bit more complicated. So there is a race sometimes to be the first person.
Don't you still think it's illogical? Because when somebody of a government position or somebody will see us, they'll say you're most likely going to be someone who we are targeted because you're
are
ideal.
protected under the Race Relations Act. We are protected.
So
as
regardless
a
of whether we have a strong political engagement or anything like that, logically as a state who should be looking after their members of within the society, you said that it's very likely that you, Mr. Singh, are going to be abused walking down the street in an area which is which have a right wing.
But I think is sometimes the people, the police and everyone, they probably react to what's in the news.
And it's convenient. It's convenient to ignore you. Yeah. It's convenient to ignore your viewpoint.
And what's been politically driven as well. If you haven't got a political sort of backing, or you haven't got that weight behind you, you're not interesting really, and no one's going to be interested in you. So it could be that as well. That's
the fact that if you in life you want something, you've got to go and get it. And I think if you want certain platforms, you want certain things to be representing us or certain data to be collected, then we've got to be proactive about it. And I think we have been. I mean, the Sikh network, for example, is doing a lot of work in terms of getting the Sikh tick box, and that's a step in the right direction.
Ethnicity tick box.
Ethnicity.
Yeah,
but and that would then filter down to other levels. They would then get into the police records. They would then get into other employment records, where Sikhs would be then be recognised for who they are and are they being protected. And I think these are the steps in the right direction. If we see something the system that isn't working for us, nothing is stopping us to fixing it.
I mean, it's a recording of the hate crime as well. It's working with the police constabularies. It's understanding that they record correctly what they see.
It's challenging challenging those statistics. The many, for example, the Muslim community have done really well over the last few years to bring the hate crime towards their community on the agenda. It's genuinely now on the agenda. It's a term which is regularly used, understood, and this is the direction which we should be going. We should.
Well, the Jewish community has done that as well. So over the years, the LGBT community have done that as well, and the Sikh community just lagged behind. And unfortunately, it's something that we just need to move forward. Conscious that the time is beginning to run out. It was a bit of an ambitious topic. When we started this topic at the beginning of the show, we didn't know where it was going to lead to. But it's been interesting. I think we've probably got something out of this discussion anyway. So thank you again for your contribution, and thank you for watching us, and we'll bring you something again next week, and try and have a deep discussion about another issue or topic that has an impact on all of us. So thank you, KTV London. Thank you to the panelists, and Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.